In the days following the ball, the Bennet household buzzes with gossip and speculation. Jane and Elizabeth discuss the events of the evening, with Jane expressing her interest in Mr. Bingley, who seems equally taken with her. Elizabeth, however, remains skeptical of Mr. Darcy, recalling his dismissive attitude. Their mother, oblivious to Elizabeth's concerns, is determined to secure a match between Jane and Mr. Bingley. As the days pass, Mr. Bingley visits the Bennets frequently, his genuine affection for Jane becoming evident. The two share tender moments, while Elizabeth observes their growing bond with a mixture of happiness and wariness. Meanwhile, Mr. Darcy's presence looms large. Despite his initial aloofness, Elizabeth finds herself intrigued by the complexities of his character. One afternoon, while visiting the nearby Meryton, Elizabeth encounters Mr. Wickham, a charming officer who captivates her with tales of his past with Mr. Darcy. Wickham paints Darcy as a villain, claiming he denied him a promised inheritance. Elizabeth, swayed by Wickham's charisma, begins to view Darcy with even more disdain. As the weeks unfold, Jane and Bingley's relationship flourishes, yet Elizabeth cannot shake her growing animosity towards Darcy. The contrast between Bingley's warmth and Darcy's coldness becomes increasingly apparent, fueling her prejudice. As the season progresses, the Bennets receive an invitation to a grand ball at Netherfield, hosted by Mr. Bingley. The excitement in the Bennet household is palpable, especially for Jane, who hopes to see Bingley again. Elizabeth, however, feels a mix of anticipation and dread, knowing that Mr. Darcy will also be in attendance. At the ball, the atmosphere is electric. Jane and Bingley dance and laugh, their chemistry undeniable, while Elizabeth tries to avoid Darcy's gaze. Yet, despite her best efforts, she finds herself drawn into conversation with him. To her surprise, Darcy reveals a more amiable side, engaging her in a spirited debate about character and society. Elizabeth's initial impressions begin to waver, but she quickly reminds herself of his pride and arrogance. As the evening progresses, Wickham appears, and Elizabeth is thrilled to see him. Their conversation is light-hearted, and Wickham continues to disparage Darcy, further influencing Elizabeth's opinion. However, Darcy's lingering presence and unexpected moments of vulnerability leave Elizabeth questioning her judgments. The night culminates in a dance between Elizabeth and Darcy, where they exchange banter and challenge each other's views. Despite the tension, there is an undeniable spark, leaving Elizabeth both frustrated and intrigued. After the ball, the dynamics in the Bennet household shift dramatically. Jane's blossoming relationship with Bingley becomes the talk of the town, while Elizabeth grapples with her conflicting feelings towards Darcy. Mrs. Bennet is ecstatic about Jane's prospects, frequently mentioning the possibility of an engagement. Elizabeth, however, remains wary, fearing that Jane's affections may not be reciprocated. Meanwhile, Darcy's behavior continues to perplex her. He seems to be drawn to Elizabeth, often seeking her out at social gatherings, yet his pride keeps him at a distance. One afternoon, while visiting the Gardeners, Elizabeth receives a letter from Jane detailing her growing affection for Bingley. Jane describes Bingley as kind-hearted and genuine, further solidifying Elizabeth's belief that he is a worthy match. However, Elizabeth's thoughts drift back to Darcy, whose presence is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As the days pass, the tension between Elizabeth and Darcy escalates. During a chance encounter at the Gardener's estate, Darcy unexpectedly confesses his admiration for Elizabeth, admitting that he is captivated by her intelligence and spirit. Elizabeth is taken aback, struggling to reconcile her feelings of resentment with this revelation. She confronts him about his treatment of Wickham, and the conversation turns heated. Darcy defends his actions, revealing the truth about Wickham's character, but Elizabeth remains unconvinced. Their argument ends with Elizabeth feeling more resolute in her disdain for Darcy, yet a small part of her cannot deny the complexity of her feelings. As autumn settles in, the Bennet family faces new challenges. Mr. Collins, a distant cousin and heir to the Bennet estate, announces his intention to visit. Mrs. Bennet is eager to secure a marriage for one of her daughters, believing Collins to be a suitable match due to his connections. When Mr. Collins arrives, he is pompous and self-important, immediately declaring his desire to marry one of the Bennet sisters. Jane and Elizabeth find his advances amusing, but Mrs. Bennet is determined to encourage the match. During a dinner at the Bennet household, Mr. Collins awkwardly proposes to Elizabeth, who is horrified by the idea. She firmly rejects him, but he insists that her refusal is merely a formality. Elizabeth's rejection only fuels Mr. Collins' determination, and he vows to win her over. Meanwhile, Jane's relationship with Bingley continues to flourish, providing a stark contrast to Elizabeth's situation. As the days pass, Mr. Collins remains persistent, often visiting the Bennets and making grandiose declarations of his affection. Elizabeth's frustration grows, and she confides in Jane about her feelings. Jane encourages her to stand firm, reminding her of the importance of marrying for love rather than convenience. Elizabeth's resolve strengthens, but the pressure from her mother and Mr. Collins begins to weigh heavily on her. The arrival of winter brings unexpected news. Jane receives an invitation from Bingley to dine at Netherfield, and Elizabeth encourages her to accept. However, Mrs. Bennet insists that Jane should take a carriage to ensure she arrives in style, leading to a series of mishaps that leave Jane ill. Elizabeth is worried for her sister, and when Jane falls sick, she rushes to Netherfield to care for her. At Netherfield, Elizabeth finds herself in close quarters with Darcy, who is both attentive and aloof. Despite her initial disdain, she cannot help but notice his moments of kindness towards Jane. As the days pass, Elizabeth and Darcy engage in spirited discussions, challenging each other's views on society and class. Elizabeth begins to see a different side of Darcy, one that is thoughtful and introspective. However, her feelings are complicated by her lingering prejudice against him. One evening, during a particularly heated debate, Darcy surprises Elizabeth by revealing his admiration for her intelligence and independence. Elizabeth is taken aback, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. She confronts him about his pride, and their conversation becomes a turning point in their relationship. Despite their differences, there is an undeniable chemistry between them, leaving Elizabeth questioning her previous judgments. As spring approaches, the atmosphere in the Bennet household shifts once again. Jane's health improves, and her relationship with Bingley deepens, much to Mrs. Bennet's delight. However, Elizabeth remains cautious, sensing that external pressures may threaten their happiness. Meanwhile, Mr. Collins persists in his pursuit of Elizabeth, even after her firm rejection. His relentless advances become a source of frustration for her, and she confides in Jane about her growing anxiety. Jane encourages her to remain steadfast, reminding her that true love cannot be forced. One afternoon, while visiting the gardeners, Elizabeth receives news that Mr. Wickham has returned to Meryton. Excited to see him again, she seeks him out, eager to hear more about his past. Their conversation is light-hearted, and Wickham's charm draws her in once more. However, as they discuss Darcy, Elizabeth finds herself torn between her growing feelings for Wickham and her lingering resentment towards Darcy. Wickham continues to paint Darcy in a negative light, further fueling Elizabeth's prejudice. Despite this, Elizabeth cannot shake the feeling that there is more to Darcy than meets the eye. As the days pass, she grapples with her emotions, uncertain of whom to trust. Meanwhile, Bingley's attentions towards Jane grow more serious, and Elizabeth finds solace in her sister's happiness, even as her own feelings remain conflicted. As summer arrives, the social landscape shifts dramatically. Bingley's affections for Jane deepen, and it seems an engagement is imminent. However, Elizabeth cannot ignore the tension surrounding their relationship, especially with Darcy's lingering presence. During a gathering at Netherfield, Elizabeth witnesses a confrontation between Darcy and Bingley, leaving her unsettled. Darcy's pride and Bingley's affability create an uneasy dynamic, and Elizabeth begins to worry that external pressures may jeopardize her sister's happiness. Amidst the chaos, Mr. Collins arrives once again, determined to propose to Elizabeth. This time, his proposal is even more absurd, filled with self-congratulatory remarks about his own importance. Elizabeth's rejection is met with disbelief, and her mother's frustration grows. As the summer progresses, Jane and Bingley's relationship flourishes, but Elizabeth feels increasingly isolated. One evening, while walking in the garden, she encounters Darcy, who surprises her with a candid admission of his feelings. He confesses that he is drawn to her spirit and intelligence, leaving Elizabeth stunned. Their conversation quickly spirals into a heated debate about class and societal expectations. Elizabeth challenges Darcy's views, and he, in turn, reveals the depth of his admiration for her. Despite their differences, a spark ignites between them, forcing Elizabeth to confront her prejudices and reconsider her feelings. As autumn settles in, the Bennet family faces new trials. Jane and Bingley's relationship reaches a pivotal moment when Bingley abruptly departs for London, leaving Jane heartbroken. Elizabeth is furious, suspecting that Darcy played a role in Bingley's decision to leave. Determined to uncover the truth, she confronts Darcy, who admits that he advised Bingley to reconsider his feelings for Jane. Elizabeth is incensed, feeling that Darcy has interfered in her sister's happiness. Their argument escalates, and Darcy reveals his own feelings for Elizabeth, confessing that he loves her despite their differences. Shocked by his admission, Elizabeth grapples with her emotions. She acknowledges her own feelings but is torn between her growing affection for Darcy and her anger over his actions. The tension between them simmers, and Elizabeth's resolve to stand firm against societal expectations begins to waver. As the days pass, Mr. Collins returns once more, determined to propose to Elizabeth. This time, his proposal is met with a mix of frustration and amusement, as Elizabeth firmly rejects him again. The pressure from her mother intensifies, but Elizabeth remains resolute in her decision to marry for love, not convenience. As winter approaches, Elizabeth's world becomes increasingly complicated. The news of Jane's heartbreak spreads throughout Meryton, and Elizabeth feels the weight of her sister's disappointment. Determined to support Jane, she encourages her to remain hopeful about Bingley's return. Meanwhile, Darcy's presence looms large, and Elizabeth finds herself caught between her feelings for him and her anger over his interference. One evening, while visiting the gardeners, Elizabeth encounters Wickham again. Their conversation takes a turn as Wickham reveals more about his past with Darcy, painting him as a villain. Elizabeth is torn between her growing affection for Darcy and the negative portrayal Wickham presents. As the weeks pass, Elizabeth receives an unexpected invitation to Pemberley, Darcy's estate. Despite her reservations, she agrees to accompany the gardeners, curious to see the man who has captured her thoughts. Upon arriving at Pemberley, Elizabeth is struck by the estate's beauty and grandeur. As she explores the grounds, she encounters Darcy unexpectedly. To her surprise, he is warm and welcoming, showing her a side of himself she had not seen before. Their interactions are filled with tension, yet Elizabeth cannot deny her growing admiration for him. As they spend time together, Elizabeth begins to see Darcy in a new light, challenging her preconceived notions and prejudices. As spring arrives, the atmosphere in Pemberley shifts. Elizabeth finds herself increasingly drawn to Darcy, who continues to display kindness and humility. Their conversations deepen, and Elizabeth discovers a shared love for literature and art. However, lingering doubts about his character remain, fueled by her memories of Wickham's claims. One afternoon, while walking in the gardens, Darcy surprises Elizabeth by revealing his intentions to propose once again. This time, however, he approaches the subject with humility and vulnerability. He acknowledges his past mistakes and expresses genuine remorse for his actions. Elizabeth is taken aback by his sincerity and finds herself grappling with her feelings. As she reflects on their journey, she realizes that her prejudices have clouded her judgment. In a moment of clarity, Elizabeth admits her own feelings for Darcy, acknowledging the complexity of their relationship. Their conversation culminates in a heartfelt exchange, where they both express their desire to overcome societal expectations and forge their own path. As they embrace, the weight of their past misunderstandings begins to lift, leaving room for hope and new beginnings. As summer unfolds, Elizabeth and Darcy navigate the complexities of their relationship. With the support of the gardeners, they work to bridge the gap between their families. Elizabeth's newfound understanding of Darcy challenges her to confront her own biases and prejudices. Meanwhile, Jane and Bingley's relationship rekindles, bringing joy to the Bennet household. The contrast between their love and Elizabeth's evolving feelings for Darcy creates a sense of harmony amidst the chaos. However, challenges remain. The arrival of Lydia, Elizabeth's younger sister, brings unexpected turmoil. Lydia's reckless behavior threatens to tarnish the family's reputation, and Elizabeth fears for her sister's future. When Lydia elopes with Wickham, the Bennets are thrust into a scandal that could ruin them. Elizabeth is devastated, feeling the weight of her family's honor on her shoulders. In the midst of this crisis, Darcy steps forward, determined to help. He uses his influence to track down Lydia and Wickham, ultimately facilitating their marriage to protect the Bennet family's reputation. Elizabeth is overwhelmed by Darcy's selflessness and commitment, realizing the depth of his love for her. As the dust settles, Elizabeth confronts her feelings once more, acknowledging that pride and prejudice have no place in their relationship. As autumn approaches, the Bennet family begins to heal from the turmoil of the past. Lydia and Wickham's marriage, though scandalous, brings a sense of closure to the family. Jane and Bingley's engagement is announced, filling the Bennet household with joy. Elizabeth stands by her sister, supporting her through the preparations for the wedding. Amidst the celebrations, Elizabeth's relationship with Darcy flourishes. They spend time together, exploring the estate and discussing their hopes for the future. Elizabeth finds herself falling deeper in love with Darcy, appreciating his kindness and integrity. However, the specter of societal expectations still looms. Elizabeth grapples with the pressure to conform to traditional norms, questioning whether their love can withstand the scrutiny of their families. During a quiet moment, Darcy expresses his desire to marry Elizabeth, affirming his commitment to her despite the challenges they face. Elizabeth's heart swells with joy, yet she hesitates, fearing the repercussions of their union. In a moment of vulnerability, she confides in Darcy about her fears, and he reassures her that their love can overcome any obstacle. Their conversation deepens their bond, solidifying their connection and paving the way for a future together. As winter arrives, the Bennet family prepares for a new chapter. Jane and Bingley's wedding brings the community together, and Elizabeth finds herself surrounded by love and support. The atmosphere is filled with joy, yet Elizabeth cannot ignore the lingering doubts about her own future. As the wedding day approaches, she reflects on her journey, recognizing the growth she has experienced. The challenges she faced have shaped her into a stronger person, and her love for Darcy has only deepened. On the day of the wedding, Elizabeth stands by Jane's side, witnessing the union of two souls destined to be together. The ceremony is filled with laughter and tears, a celebration of love overcoming societal barriers. As the newlyweds embark on their journey, Elizabeth feels a sense of hope for her own future. Later that evening, Darcy approaches Elizabeth, his eyes filled with warmth and admiration. He expresses his desire to marry her, reaffirming his commitment to their love. Elizabeth's heart races as she realizes that the time has come to embrace her feelings fully. In a moment of clarity, she accepts his proposal, understanding that love transcends pride and prejudice. Their engagement marks the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with promise and the potential for happiness. As spring blossoms, Elizabeth and Darcy prepare for their wedding. The excitement in the Bennet household is palpable, with Jane and Bingley offering their support and encouragement. Elizabeth reflects on the journey that has brought her to this moment, acknowledging the growth she has experienced. The challenges of the past have shaped her into a stronger person, and she feels ready to embrace the future with Darcy by her side. However, lingering doubts about societal expectations remain. Elizabeth grapples with the pressure to conform to traditional norms, questioning whether their love can withstand the scrutiny of their families. As the wedding day approaches, she confides in Jane about her fears. Jane reassures her, reminding Elizabeth that true love can conquer all obstacles. On the day of the wedding, Elizabeth stands before her family and friends, her heart filled with joy and anticipation. The ceremony is a beautiful celebration of love, and as she exchanges vows with Darcy, she feels a sense of peace wash over her. Their union is a testament to the power of love and understanding, transcending the barriers of pride and prejudice. As they embark on their journey together, Elizabeth knows that they will face challenges, but with Darcy by her side, she feels ready to embrace whatever the future holds. As summer unfolds, Elizabeth and Darcy embark on their new life together. Their marriage is filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect, and they navigate the complexities of their relationship with grace. Elizabeth finds solace in Darcy's unwavering support, and together they confront the challenges of society and family expectations. As they settle into their new home at Pemberley, Elizabeth discovers the beauty of their shared life. The estate reflects their personalities, blending elegance with warmth. Elizabeth feels a sense of belonging, and her love for Darcy deepens as they create a home together. Meanwhile, Jane and Bingley thrive in their marriage, providing a source of joy and inspiration for Elizabeth. The sisters' bond grows stronger, and they support each other through the ups and downs of married life. As the seasons change, Elizabeth and Darcy face external pressures, but they remain united in their love. They confront societal expectations with courage, challenging the norms that once dictated their lives. Together, they forge their own path, embracing the beauty of their relationship. Elizabeth learns that true happiness comes from within, and with Darcy by her side, she feels empowered to face any challenge. Their love story becomes a testament to the power of understanding, acceptance, and the triumph of love over pride and prejudice, as they navigate the complexities of life hand in hand.